Hi, okay. If you're coming from my other channel, welcome and thank you for coming. How I spend my 20s. I've seen this video a long time ago on this space, but I have never really brought myself to do it because, to be honest with you, I have never even really sat down, really sat down to observe what I did with my 20s. But looking back now, I now know what exactly I did with my 20s. Yes, 20s are a very fruitful years, of course, after transitioning from childhood to adulthood is interesting because you're met with so many new things and you're met with so many excitement of, okay, you're now an adult, you think you can make some certain decisions for yourself. But we, the ladies at that time, we begin to think of getting married, although coupled with the fact that I'm from the north central part of the country, so marriage is an early kind of thing that is usually done on both parties, both male and female. You would see, at least, even though now things are really changing, in the past you see a girl of 16, 17, highest 18 is already married, a man of yeah, of 25. In fact, in some cultures, 30 years old man said is too old, like, that kind of thing. Yeah, a 30-year-old, 27, 30-year-old man will be maybe marrying his second wife. Yeah, maybe he married his first wife when he was barely 25. So I came from a place where people marry early, right? But I wish I did marry early. Maybe I'll do a story time about that. I wish, like, I had always wanted to see myself marry early. Like, I remember receiving my first marriage proposal at the age of 16. I was still in secondary school. Yeah, I think I was in SS2 or so. Yeah. So my dad actually rejected it, and he said, and no, but I'll do a story time about that. I'll talk about it separately in that video, where at 17, what the mind of a young 17-year-old girl is going through, and if I really support the marriage at that early marriage, or I don't support it, the disadvantage. And I'll do a video about that. Let me just bore you here. So now, in my I told you my first marriage proposal came at the age of 17. Was I excited about it? Yes, at that time I wanted to get married. Like I told you, I come in and I come from this space where, that kind of thing. So my dad rejected it and said, no, I still needed a little bit of time to just further my education. And because my dad obviously is an intellectual himself, he's an educated man, so he valued education for me. My mom is equally an educator. So my parents, I came from a home where both parents are educated. Okay, so he felt 17 was too young. So that proposal passed. When I was 19 again, another proposal came. At that time I was feeling like, I'm not a big girl. Probably when I was 17 I was really little. 19, I'm not a big girl, I'll soon be 20. But guess what, daddy still said no. You understand? So to me personally, now transitioning into my 20s, I really appreciated the fact that my dad even rejected those marriage proposals, because there was something about getting to the age of 20. Then I was now in the higher institution, and when you get to the higher institution, you see boys, you see, now, and I was like, thank God I was not married. Thank God I didn't come in as a married woman. So, my early 20s obviously is school most of the time. If not now that times have changed a little bit, where kids now go into university as early as 15, 16, 17. So some of them are already even graduating at the age of 21, 22, very early 20s. So for my own time, I'm a millennial, and I got into the higher institution at my early 20s, honestly. So getting into school, going through school, I did a 4 year course. Yes, even though the 4 year course, due to Nigerian factor, I did not go through the 4 years. It was more than 4 years. So basically, I think by the time I finished, I was done with the higher institution. I was already in my mid 20s. Yeah, right. 24 is it mid? 24 years is mid, abi? Okay. We were already approaching mid 20s already. So at that time, that was when I met my husband. And another topic again for another day, will I say matchmaking or arranging marriages. Okay, that was how I met my own spouse, and then we got married. I was married by the age, okay, the year I got married was that year I clocked 25. Yes. So getting married, I had little issues early in marriage that had to do with fertility, and I started TTCing. Yes, at a very early age, I started TTCing because my very first pregnancy, as soon as I got married, was actually an ectopic pregnancy. So After that, there was some little delay for like 2 years thereabout before I now had my first son. So in between that time that I was doing nothing, I was a teacher because I actually studied education, mathematics education to be specific, B.Ed mathematics. And so I started like trying to, when you're fresh from school, what comes to your mind is whatever you study is what you're going to work with. Whatever you study, you imagine yourself in front of one big mahogany desk, as a boss, or as a, then I was thinking of myself as one principal. Okay, so I started practicing my profession. I was teaching, but honestly speaking, it wasn't bringing home any valuable returns. Yeah, the teaching was but I did that, okay, for like that space of 2 to 3 years thereabouts, or even almost 4 years. I was actually teaching before I had my first son. Okay, so I had my first son in my late 20s, like really ending 20s, because I had him when I was 29. Yes, I had him 29 when I was 29 years. The year I had him in January, so that year was the year I was going to be 29 in October. So will I say I had him at the age of 28? Okay, let's leave it that way. I had him at the age of 28 years old. So at 28 years, a new mom. So can you see, from the beginning of my 20s, there was really nothing to do. So when I see some people sit down and they are talking some kind of big ambition, some kind of big, I envy them with the fact that they had space, or they have space to actually create that kind of ambitious life in their 20s. To me, I just feel that my 20s had nothing close to ambition aside from schooling, because I got married in my 20s, so, and surrounding whatever it is, so there was really nothing much. So I won't come here and sit down and say mistakes I made in my 20s. To be honest with you, I don't think I made any mistake. Honestly, I don't think so. I would say where I would fault myself, or I would beat myself, is when I got to my 30s. Okay, my early 30s, I now had my second child. Do you understand? So I would say in my 30s, even with the child at hand at that time, now in my 30s, I had already started thinking, because before I had him, like I said, I was teaching, because before I had my first son, okay, I was teaching, right? So for that TTC, 2 years, those 2 years of TTC, till up to when I even conceived, I was still teaching. Yeah, I was heavily pregnant for my first son. I was still going to work. So it was when I had him, I now resigned. So I was home for like 3 years after I had him. Yes, I had him, like I told you, I had him when I was 28. Oh, is it 27, Seth? Yeah, because I stayed at home for 3 years, and then before I now, finally, when he was like 2 plus, or almost, or 3, I think so, I now went back to teaching, because I didn't know any other job now, that kind of thing. That's why I said I envy some people that have a lot of ambition in their 20s. I do envy you guys. So I now moved on to having to go back to teaching. So I thought this time around, for barely a year, I now conceived for my second son. So my second son was not as, the conception was not as easy for me like the first. So I was having issues, and I decided to stay back home. So I would say while I had him and I was home, that was when I started thinking of myself, and I told myself that I cannot go back to that chinchiri, that small salary. I can't go back. What am I going to do with it now? I have 2 kids. There's something about being a parent, the realization, like, you have 2 kids now. I'm now a mom of 2. So that money, that chicken change that was being given to me every month in the name of salary, is no longer a take-home pay. That's now being, as for mothers here, what I'm trying to say. So I was like, no, I can't go back to the teaching job. So at that time, I was already in my early 30s. So I think that was when I even started becoming ambitious. That's when I started thinking of something else to do out of teaching, out of what I was managing. It's time to make proper money. Even as I sit down now and speak to you, I'm not there yet. Honestly, I'm not there yet, but I am pushing, and this is me almost in my 40s, but I am still pushing. I don't know if you know what I'm trying to say to you. So I will still repeat myself again. I really envy those that were able to phantom what they really wanted to do in their 20s. To me, there was nothing I did. Like, my 20s just went like that, and it's like one of the fastest years in your life. Yes, your 20s is like one of the fastest. Zoom, like that, is gone, right? So my 30s was when I started trying to discover myself. I started thinking of what to do. I started thinking of being an entrepreneur. Yes, like, okay, let's see. It wasn't like I was freaked. It wasn't like I was crazy about being a boss or something, but I was just thinking of working for myself. Like, at that point, with all of the stress surrounding working for someone was getting at me. So at that time now, I was thinking of working for my own self. So this video will stretch up to part 2. The part 2 will be what I did with my 30s. Yes, what I did in my 30s and still doing in my 30s. What? Okay, thank you so much, and hope to see you in the